an area, parking strip, it may be difficult to get out of this. You need, that may have been a patrol officer there, I'm not certain. On the bike, that was pretty quick. But we are seeing the suspect stay in one spot. And if that happens, more and more officers will be able to converge to this area and hopefully get this stopped. But boy, you can tell as you look at this. You see the trash cans out in the neighborhood. You know the kids aren't in school. You know that a lot of kids could be out riding their bikes. They could be playing. And it's just so dangerous in these areas. Now, sometimes police, excuse me, will back off and go to tracking mode, and it appears that that may be the case. They'll keep the helicopter overhead, and what they will do is follow the vehicle from the air, and they'll back off with the patrol units right behind this individual. What that does, they hope, is slow down the aggressive nature of the suspect's driving and make it safer for the public. So that is what they've done right now. They've gone to tracking mode as the vehicle turns eastbound on 92nd, just leaving Wadsworth Avenue, as you can see on the Sky Map 7 there a moment ago. But boy, I tell you, it speeds up to 80 miles an hour. You see almost 65 there in this residential neighborhood. It's the type of pursuit that usually does not end well, whether the suspect somehow loses control of the vehicle, traveling too fast, or someone pulls out in front of that vehicle, and that's when we see injuries and death, and that's certainly what they want to avoid. It appears right now, even though they've backed off, they're on tracking mode. There's no patrol units right behind the vehicle. You can tell he's still traveling at an extremely high rate of speed, 75 miles an hour here, traveling northbound on Central. And at this point, going through red lights, that one looked like it had just turned green. But the suspect in this case is absolutely desperate to get away from police officers. He may be aware that there's a patrol or a helicopter overhead. He may be aware that we're overhead. It's hard to tell if he can peek and see the news media helicopters or us overhead right now. But at those speeds, at up to 80 miles an hour, going northbound on Central here in South Los Angeles, it's a very tough situation for officers, and it's an extremely dangerous situation for people out on the streets. You saw some people there. You saw the suspect just swerve around a couple other vehicles. They hope when they go to the tracking mode that it will slow the suspect's pace down. Now we're turning westbound on 78th, and they hope also that the suspect will look, see that there's no patrol cars behind him, get out of the vehicle, and get on foot. In that case, we just don't have the danger of this vehicle traveling through these neighborhoods and the potential for someone to get injured or killed. Now, we don't know exactly what the want was on this individual. Jay, if you could say that again, I'd appreciate it. We don't know exactly what he's wanted for. We don't know exactly what he's wanted for at this point in time. Actually, it looks like now we do have confirmation it's a stolen vehicle. So they tried to pull this over, at least reportedly we're getting that information, a reported stolen vehicle, that pickup truck, and we do know now that it looks like LAPD is going to re-engage. I think what you just saw happen is they went to tracking mode. They just followed him from the helicopter. They backed off all their units. The suspect didn't slow down. He continued to drive at a high rate of speed. He continued to drive erratically, and he continued to put the public in danger. At that point, a supervisor with the LAPD who was watching, he came on and said, hey, re-engage. So what they are going to do now, we believe they're going to re-engage with the patrol cars and try and stop this before it hurts someone. If they go to that surveillance mode and the suspect doesn't slow down, he continues to drive like this into oncoming traffic with no patrol cars behind him, then they figure, hey, we might as well engage and stop this before somebody gets killed. And it looks like that's the information that we're getting right now. We believe it started in the Monterey Park area or somewhere close to that. That's where we picked up some information. There was a pursuit on the West 10 into downtown LA. And then on the 110 freeway southbound at speeds above 100 miles an hour. Then onto surface streets, really in this about 10-block area of South Los Angeles, east of the 110 freeway, as where the pursuit has been for the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. The suspect has had a pattern. Now we see him turning northbound on Main. He had been southbound on Main in this exact same area maybe 15 to 20 minutes ago. So it's almost like this certain area is going around in circles almost in between as far as San Pedro to the east and the 110 freeway to the west. We're on Main once again. We've been on Central. We do believe that you're going to see patrol units behind the vehicle. If you could pull out a little bit for me, Tad. We're hearing that they're going to re-engage, and there you go. There you see the patrol car, and they are now going to re-engage on this pursuit. You can push back into the vehicle. They will be making calls. There's a helicopter overhead. If the suspect would turn into an area where there's a cul-de-sac, that would be an opportunity for them to stop this. I think if he continues west on 66th, it will end at the 110 freeway, but it looks like right before the 110 is Broadway, and now we have him turning southbound on Broadway. Excuse me. Once again, what is so worrisome about this pursuit are the speeds. Put up Sky, if you would, put our tracker. I mean, we're close to 80 miles an hour on a surface street, probably a posted 35-mile-an-hour zone. And at those types of speeds, someone's not going to see that vehicle pull out from an intersection. This will be interesting. There should be a patrol car behind them, and they just don't have everybody engaged yet. But you saw that loop to the gas station. You saw the other patrol cars now engaging, and the suspect has turned eastbound on Florence and should come right underneath us here in a moment. Can you push in for me, get a look at the suspect, see if there's anyone else in the vehicle? It looks like there are two people. We've got to a spot where you can actually see, and at this point we'd like to see if we can see a weapon or anything like that. We may be able to pass that on to the police. Now the vehicle is back northbound on Main Street and continues really just driving in this circle that I had mentioned earlier, making a right turn on 69th. And the more time he spends in this particular area going around in circles, the more units can converge on this area, and the better the likelihood that they can be in a position to stop this before someone gets hurt. So what we know is this started out on the 10 freeway, we believe in the Monterey Park area, traveled 100 miles an hour or faster on the freeway, has been up to 80 miles an hour on surface streets here in South Los Angeles. For a moment, they came off of the vehicle. They went to tracking mode to see if that would slow the pace of the driver, if that would make this a less dangerous situation for the public. It did not. Boy, look at all the debris flying back and forth in that pickup truck. And with that, it looks like they have re-engaged now. We have some information. They believe that may be a female passenger with a male driver. Sometimes it's difficult to get information immediately, but they may try a pit maneuver if they can get into position on one of these turns. And the pit maneuver, the police intervention tactic, is to hit the back of the vehicle and get it to spin out. But they do need the vehicle to be going, in most cases, less than 35 miles an hour, and they have to make sure the path of the vehicle is going to cause anyone any harm. Excuse me. So we are turning eastbound on 77th now in South Los Angeles. Excuse me, we're on Florence Avenue. It looks like LAPD now is going to get an air unit overhead. They had LA County sheriffs helping them, or assisting them, I should say. It'll be interesting if the suspect continues eastbound on Florence, exactly how far he goes, if he goes out of that little zone I was talking about that he'd been staying in, and it doesn't look like it. In some sense, that is helpful. The LAPD units are converging to this area. You'll start to see more and more of them in these intersections. And as he makes these turns, swerving around vehicles, we just certainly hope that no one gets hurt. But if you've been following this and you're seeing this, you can really tell how dangerous this can be. Followed hundreds of pursuits in the past. And sadly, in many cases, when you have a suspect driving like this, desperate to get away from police, they don't end well. Someone gets hurt or even killed. We've seen that happen too many times. Now we're southbound on Central, still in South Los Angeles, and getting a little further away from the area the suspect had been in earlier, that roundabout that he had made on Main Street and down around 60th Street, all the way over towards San Pedro for a moment. But at this point in time, it may have slowed just a little bit, which would be good if you could bring up Sky Map. And he's making an eastbound turn now onto 85th off of Central. So if they see these types of speeds down below 40 would be nice, but when they start to get up towards that 75 or 80 mile an hour mark in these neighborhoods, pulled right in front of that vehicle, that could have been a crash. That would have hurt someone if it was, making that left turn in front of a vehicle that was coming southbound on Hooper. He's turned northbound on Hooper Avenue. Once again, we believe it's a male driver with a female passenger. The vehicle came back stolen, picked up by CHP, had been 100 miles an hour or more through the freeways of downtown LA, and then made its way into South Los Angeles off the 110 freeway southbound. We've seen it drive, the suspect and this vehicle go as fast as 80 miles an hour right through a residential area. And again, that's what is so concerning about this. You can see how closely the patrol car is following the suspect now. At these types of speeds, the police don't even want to travel at this higher rate of speed in these areas because they realize how dangerous it is. If somebody pulls out in front of that vehicle, they certainly don't want to be too close at 80 miles an hour. They've got to have that cushion. And at this speed, boy, this is just so dangerous. It's frightening, actually, for the folks in this neighborhood. We're on 79th Street. We're headed back westbound. So you live in South Los Angeles. You know somebody who lives around Central, Florence, 79th Street in this area. They got kids. I mean, get the word out to them. Get the kids in the house. There's no way of knowing how this is going to end or where this suspect is going to go. But we do know how dangerous it can be for the general public and for anybody outside. And it looks like, for the most part, the pursuit has stayed in this general vicinity of South Los Angeles, east of the 110 freeway, out towards Central, headed back westbound now on 79th towards the 110 freeway. So there's definitely a pattern. With that pattern, hopefully comes the ability of LAPD to set up a spike strip or do a pit maneuver and end this without anyone getting hurt. That really is their strategy. There's someone at the LAPD right now who is supervisor, is taking a look at everything they're doing. They're making the calls out to the officers in the street behind them. They're radioing ahead to let everybody know where he's headed. The helicopter is following overhead. And they're doing everything in their power right now to get this to stop without anyone being hurt. But since they went to a tracking mode, and boy, this is a touchy, dicey situation here, right through a red light at Florence and San Pedro, now turning, I believe we're going to be northbound, we'll get another street here off of San Pedro. But a supervisor is watching this, and they're doing everything in their power to try and make certain that no one gets hurt or killed, as well as they can. A situation like this, it can be nearly impossible, but going to that tracking mode did nothing. They went to tracking mode, backed off all the units, and the suspect lost control of the vehicle, and maybe an opportunity to stop it. And that's the thing you worry about right there, just what you saw. That vehicle, that pickup truck, is not going to be able to take corners at, right next to construction workers. That is a concern. But that vehicle, that Chevy pickup truck, is not going to maneuver that well. The center of gravity is a little bit high. And we're going to see something like that happen, I'm afraid, if he continues to drive this erratically and at this high rate. But for a moment there, it looked like the suspect was going to lose control of the vehicle. He may have swerved to hit another car behind the tree that we were watching when he drove by and almost stopped. He's making a turn here. This could be a parking lot that he cannot get out of if you open up just for a minute. I'm not certain exactly. Unfortunately, that looks like there's a way for the suspect to get out right through a driveway, right next to a sidewalk. Once again, there's another patrol car where someone could have been hurt. So, boy, we are watching right now this unfold, and it is absolutely frightening. Staying in this area of South Los Angeles, if you know someone who lives in this area, to at least get the information out to them to listen, to watch, and to make sure they keep their kids inside, and for them to stay inside. It's nearly impossible to know how this is going to end or where it's going to end, but we do have a pattern that the suspect has been following in the South Los Angeles area for the most part. And you see that speed there. We have a vehicle traveling, just came up to almost to 70 miles an hour, but we saw it turning in front of a vehicle there, right through this intersection, turning south on Broadway. We've been on Broadway several times. But we've seen that vehicle go as high as 80 miles an hour right through a residential neighborhood, right past driveways, right past the trash cans. It looks like trash day in this area. And fortunately, we're not seeing a lot of people out on the streets, though. As you see them drive by, we don't see a lot of kids playing or riding their bikes. But at this rate of speed, just look how fast he goes past those other vehicles, up to 70 miles an hour, right through this residential area. And it'll be interesting to see as well, when you have a suspect like this push in, we might be able to see a little bit. We have, according to reports, a male driver and a female passenger. But when you see a suspect driving like this, that's this desperate to get away from police in a reported stolen vehicle, it makes the end of the pursuit, if it doesn't end in a crash where they're disabled, extremely tough for officers, because they're pulling into a situation with someone who's desperate to get away, with someone who could be armed, and you can tell there's a lot of movement inside that vehicle. I can't quite tell if the woman, the passenger, was actually upright there, or she was just leaning to the side. But officers do not know if these two are armed, and the end of the pursuit becomes extremely difficult for them to contain as well. You want a vehicle in front, you want a vehicle behind, you want to make certain there's no one in the line of fire if, God forbid, it would get to that point where there was a shootout. But we've seen that happen before, and they have to be prepared for it. So it continues to go on. I think Jay might be able to help me out a bit. I think this may have been going on for about 45 minutes or so. All right, very good. Standing by. Yeah, this is a bad one, Philip. This is really a tough pursuit for everyone involved in this area. We're in South LA, southbound on San Pedro Street. That vehicle we believe came back as a possible stolen. There's a male driver, a female passenger, and they've been staying for the last 15 to 20 minutes right in this area of South Los Angeles along San Pedro, down to about as far as maybe 90th Street, and then coming back to the north, but unfortunately traveling it up to 80 miles an hour on the surface street right next to homes, right past sidewalks, almost crashed a moment ago. Going around a corner, just couldn't quite maneuver. At one time, this vehicle was up to 100 miles an hour on the 10 freeway coming out of Monterey Park through downtown. But for the last 20 minutes, it's been in South Los Angeles. And, boy, what you really worry about, this time of day, we haven't seen a lot of people out on the streets, a lot of kids, because you're always worried about that. They might be riding their bike. They might be playing. And there's just no way to avoid someone riding out real quickly in a vehicle like this, traveling at 80 miles an hour from time to time through these neighborhoods. But when the vehicle does stay in this one area, which it's done again, we're eastbound, westbound on 89th Street, and now turning on Main. For the last 20 minutes, we've been right in this area. It does allow police to get into position, and at this point, we just hope nobody gets hurt, and we hope that, they can stop this before there's a crash and that potential. They did go, Philip, to tracking mode for a bit. They pulled the patrol officers off. And unfortunately, it made no difference in the demeanor of the driver. He was still erratic and still traveling at the same speeds, so they re-engaged just a few moments ago. That's our belief. A male driver, a female passenger, that's the information we've given. And you see how many patrol cars are out now as he stays in this one area. And possible stolen. We did not get that confirmed, but we do believe when they ran the plates, it came back stolen. So when that happens, you really don't get a good gauge on who's inside the vehicle. And, boy, that's extremely important. When somebody is this desperate to get away, what's going to happen when this pursuit ends? Are they armed? There's all the types of things that police have to consider and have to think about. But since the suspect's been staying in one area, you saw a patrol car on the shoulder there, Main Street, we're headed back northbound in South Los Angeles. There are a lot of units in this area ready to try and get this stopped. There's a lot of construction going on as well, as you see there in a lot of these surface streets. So, boy, it's a real danger to the public. And as you follow these things, as we have in the past, you just really hope that no one gets hurt. But this is a frightening pursuit. It's a fairly big vehicle, fairly heavy vehicle, and you get that up to 80 miles an hour, and then, the potential someone could get hurt very easily. Well, it's really hard to say, Philip. A lot of the pursuits we followed, and they'll be in a neighborhood that they know, they'll have friends come out. We've seen that so many times, or they'll call, and people they know will be out on the streets. I haven't seen a lot of that, but certainly you stay in the same area. And if he really knew this area and was looking for a place to ditch the vehicle and, to run and get out of the car, he's had a lot of time to do that, especially when they backed off and went to surveillance mode. So it's really difficult, but that's what makes these pursuits so challenging. Nobody really knows what's going on inside that vehicle. Nobody knows who this person is. We don't believe. The police may. But if it's a stolen vehicle, you don't get much from that plate as far as who could be the driver. So it's really difficult to know. Oh, there you go. Look at that, a spike strip, and that did the trick. We'll see if they get out. Boy, he's continuing and turning around into oncoming traffic. For a moment there, you see the patrol cars. They did not get in front of him and stop him because they thought his speed was too high. But I believe he hit a spike strip there, so we should see one of those tires at least be deflated and this vehicle start to slow down. And boy, it really gets tough to drive a vehicle at a high rate of speed if you have a flat. I believe Jay can help me a little bit. Probably about 45 to 50 minutes ago is when we actually heard about it. Started in Monterey Park on the westbound 10 at up to 100 miles an hour or higher. Went into downtown Los Angeles, so on the 101 for a moment, and then on to the 110 south. Yeah, boy, look at that. And can we tell if that tire's flat? You know, I wonder if he just turned to miss the spike strip. Yeah, it looked. You know, there's somebody out. Yeah, we're hearing that, okay, now you see a lot of people out on the streets and he's stopping. So it could be that he's letting people know. And it looks like there might be something wrong with the vehicle almost with what happened right there, or he just gunned it and it took off and the right rear tire just started to spin. But, oh boy, there's almost a collision. That move we did hear that he made was to avoid the spike strip. And when the vehicle spun out and then he head back the other direction. But now we're seeing what I talked about earlier, all these people out on these areas, these surface streets, watching him go by. You don't know if he knows those people, if it's like this is where he lives, those are his friends, just wants recognition. I mean, sadly, we've seen that in the past. We've seen that happen. Or if it's just being broadcast, the information is out there, and people are, oh boy, there's a close one. You can tell the potential with this pursuit right now for someone to be hurt or killed if this individual doesn't just decide to get out and run. And hopefully that's the case, because then you just don't have this, this missile basically driving around South LA. Open up a bit. Open up a bit. Yeah, no, they backed off a little bit, Philip, but it's challenging no matter how you look at this, okay? They get right behind this guy so that everybody can hear the lights and sirens at 80 miles an hour, and it could be one of the patrol cars who hurts or kills someone. Boy, look right through that. It was a green light, but you could tell at high rates of speed we're back westbound. You know, there's just no easy answer. There's no easy way to contain someone who's just desperate when it comes to trying policing the situation. You get right behind the guy, he goes faster and faster and faster, and it's almost like the police have pushed him to drive more erratically. They did back off and went to surveillance mode, but he continued to drive at 80 miles an hour and continued to swerve in and out of, the lanes into oncoming traffic, that sort of thing. So they backed off a little. Let's open up out of our shot, Tad, and see if we can tell how far back the patrol cars are. They may have gone back to surveillance mode, and that looks like what has happened.
Yeah, Scott,
so they're back to a tracking mode.
Scott, not to interrupt you, but we have that video ready of when he was trying to avoid that spike strip over here to the right. If you can walk us through that again, what happened? It looks like he just...
I won't be able to see the video, so you'll have to talk him through that.
Yeah, it looks like he just stopped, saw the spike strip up ahead, and made a very quick U-turn, very unsafe. He skidded there, made a left turn, and then turned in the opposite direction.
Looks like he may have stopped underneath the bridge, underneath the freeway, but there's several patrol cars right behind him. Oh, there he goes. He's paralleling and he got on the on-ramp here, the access lane to the 110 southbound. So this will be interesting because last time he was on the freeway traveling over 100 miles an hour. Obviously, the traffic is light, but there you go, top of your screen, I believe. You got him. There you go. We saw some extremely high rates of speed for this pickup truck on the freeway. But, when you're on the freeway, I think it's a little different mentality as far as a strategy, as far as the police are concerned. Because right now, although he's obviously a danger to the people on the freeway, it's not near as dangerous as driving at 80 miles an hour down those surface streets with construction workers, possibly kids, out on the street. At this point, even though we're seeing speeds that are probably going to be up above 100 miles an hour, probably getting close to as fast as that truck can
100
go.
miles an hour, yeah.
Because there's not much in the way of traffic, and from what I can tell out my window, it looks like smooth sailing all the way down to San Pedro to the end of the freeway. At this point, I don't think they'll get right behind the vehicle, and they're not. I can see them out the window. You won't be able to see them. Don't pull out. They're too far back. At this point, with the helicopter overhead and the fact that it's nearly impossible for the suspect to stop and get out and run, they're just going into surveillance mode.
I'd like to let everybody know you're watching Eyewitness News at 11 a.m. I'm Philip Palmer with Giovanna Lara. Scott Reif is in Air 7 HD. And we came on a little bit early on this day to see a stolen vehicle that has been making its way through South L.A., driving at incredibly high rates of speed on the freeway, and certainly dangerously high rates of speed on side streets.
Oh, there
he goes, Scott.
Looks like that.
Wow.
There's patrol cars that are behind him here. If he didn't damage, he's going into oncoming traffic, coming southbound on the 110 freeway.
Oh no!
Holy cow! This is going to be a tough situation right here. Oh my goodness! Someone could be killed here. He's northbound into the southbound lanes of the 110 freeway, and I'm just not certain how this individual is going to be able to handle this without being involved in a crash or stopping. I've not seen this before, where a pursuit turned around and went into oncoming traffic. Now the shoulder is available. There's a truck coming towards him right now. My goodness, that's going to be a close call. And it looks like, boy, the air unit's overhead, but I don't think you're going to see any patrol cars follow this guy. Oh, boy, look at that. You can tell how close that is. That is crazy. Northbound on the 110 freeway, I think the next off-ramp might be Century Boulevard, or, well, we'll find out here in a moment. Not a lot of volume, and at this point the suspect was able to continue incredibly after spinning out, hitting that center median. Yeah, look at that, boy. Able to come back, and now he's going to be able to get off. If no one's coming on the on-ramp, there's a head-on collision coming. Oh, my goodness, look at that. Boy, we knew that was
airbag went off in the other vehicle.
Manchester Avenue. And look, the suspect is still going and trying to get away. We hope that person's not hurt too badly. A lot of damage to that vehicle.
Yes.
And the suspect continues on.
He's still there.
Into
It's
the
not like
on-ramp.
he's not in. It's not like he's going with traffic yet.
He was going 30 to 40 miles an hour when he hit that other car.
My goodness. Yeah, that was a bad crash.
See, Scott, I think the reason
like
he spun out on that one is because he tried to get that exit. I think he was trying to leave the freeway, and then he just went backwards trying to get off the freeway again.
Yeah, I think it was a moment of indecision as well. He was, 100 miles an hour and then decided, hey, I want to get off here. The vehicle spun out. You guys can probably re-rack that footage. It was dramatic when he spun out and he came right back into oncoming traffic. Now, we're on Manchester, and he's headed eastbound away from the 110, pretty much back in that same area, up onto the curb to try and get around. There are a lot of patrol cars and a lot of units in this area. They were tracking him to this area. We can only hope at this point maybe there's enough damage to that vehicle. Maybe the radiator was
I don't know.
damaged that it could maybe won't be able to continue on. But
a pickup like that, Scott, and the thing is, when we show a chance at that head-on collision, the one good thing about that for the victim in this is that it was a bit of a glancing blow. You can see most of the damage was to the driver's side headlight area for that smaller car. But a pickup like this is going to be much more substantial when hitting something like that. That could have been a fatal accident had he hit that person more directly. Thankfully, the airbags in the compact car were deployed.
There it is.
That's the shot when he tried to catch that exit. Now look at him as he's driving through oncoming traffic again.
Yep.
This person is desperate to get away.
Absolutely, and erratic. And, you wonder sometimes when you follow these pursuits what might be going on inside that cab. In the suspect's mind, we believe that the female passenger, we don't know if they stole the vehicle. It did come back as, possibly stolen. But you do wonder sometimes what they could be thinking, because they're going to get hurt as well. Unfortunately, they're probably going to hurt someone else, and they probably already have in that accident that we saw. We're back in that same area, though, on Main Street northbound. We've gone right by that construction a few moments ago, if you were with us. But these speeds are frightening. The indecision on the part of the driver is frightening. Several times we've seen that vehicle almost lose control. One time it lost control, hit a center median, and then we just showed you came back against traffic on the 110, headed northbound into southbound oncoming traffic, and then hitting that other vehicle. But boy, there was a potential for an extremely high-speed collision when he first came onto the freeway there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to wonder if the two people in the vehicle are arguing about what to do, right? No, get off here. No, do this, do that.
Well,
and,
let's be clear, Scott, and maybe you can clear this up. We don't know that that's a passenger and not like somebody that he kidnapped. We really know very little about the passenger.
Yeah, we know nothing. I mean, that's what really makes it so challenging when these things come to an end. For the officers. It's LAPD who's in charge. Initially, it was CHP on the freeway. This is LAPD's area. They've got an air unit overhead. I can't see it out my window, but open up a little bit. Yeah, they have really, you can open up wide and come south a little bit. There you go. You can see the distance of the patrol car from the vehicle. And it looks at this point,
he
spun out. Now, there might have been a spike strip again that looks almost like the same spot. Now, there are several vehicles in front of him, but I don't think they're going to stop him. You know, the officers are not going to put themselves in harm's way to stop this guy by allowing him to run into a vehicle that they are in. Now, I have seen the LAPD one time commandeer a semi and put it on an intersection so that the suspect couldn't get past that semi.
Right.
I don't think they've done it before. I've seen it. It was in the valley. But when he turns around and comes back towards officers, if they're out of the vehicle, they may let the vehicle there and get away. Or they may open fire on the suspect if you try to drive into a vehicle that they're next to. But if he comes back at them head on, they're going to get out of the way. There's no sense in them getting hurt to stop this, and anybody surrounding them as well, especially at these speeds. So we're back in that same area. We're eastbound on Florence. If you know where the Postal Annex is in South LA, it's been right around that area. And moments ago, I don't know if you noticed, but there were a lot of people outside watching the pursuit go by at one of those intersections. So it looks like the word is out that this is happening. So if you have kids, keep them indoors. They don't need to be outside in this area.
No, absolutely not. And was that the 110 freeway where we saw that accident earlier where he was driving against traffic? Is that the 110? Is that correct?
That's
right
correct.
There.
That was the Harbor Freeway.
Yeah, the Harbor Freeway. So driving against traffic at like 40, 50 miles an hour, and he crashed into this black vehicle that was trying to get on the freeway there. Yeah, this guy is really erratic and not thinking clearly. He's definitely a danger to the people on the roads right now.
There's no question about that. It is frightening, and I've said this several times, but well, look at that. He just can't control that pickup truck at that high rate of speed. You mentioned it, Philip. You can't be doing 65 miles an hour in that thing and then think you're going to make an immediate right turn. You're going to spin out. But, it's frightening because we've seen this happen. A guy that's desperate, he makes a turn like that. There's a pedestrian in the intersection, and that person gets killed.
Right.
I mean, it's easy. We've seen it so many times to lose control of a vehicle at that rate of speed. I mean, what we really hope for is, this just gets over and they give themselves up. Well, the other option is, they make a run for it. They stop the vehicle and they get out on foot. At least now you're not dealing with this vehicle that is endangering the public.
Well, we're kind of able to see in that passenger side
in,
just a little bit from this perspective, and kind of gives you an idea as to if there's some sort of, hand gestures at each other, if there's any kind of animosity going on. But that person just seems to be sitting there, the passenger. But it's hard to see, and I know you can't see in your monitor, but Philip, there's clearly a second person in there.
Yeah, I see a white. Could they be wearing a mask?
Well, it looked to me like it was an arm, but
an arm? Okay.
I can't really see. Yeah, you can't really see, but at least here. We do know that, and I'm just going to guess that it looked. I thought it was a male, but you did say that it might have been a female, right, Scott?
That's the information that we got, Philip. But these things are so dynamic, and
look at
the people out taking photos and taking pictures and video, and look at that vehicle right there. Open up a little bit. Is that guy trying to follow him? In the Cadillac SUV there. It looked almost like they were trying to do that. I'm not certain, but look at the people coming out on the street, knowing this is happening, knowing the area, And back to your question, the report was from the LAPD. They believed it was a female, but that has not obviously been confirmed in a male driver.
Right. But again, no word on whether this guy is armed.
No, I mean, it's a stolen vehicle. There would be little to no way for them to know that at this point in time, unless they were able to get a description or one of the officers recognized this individual as wanted, to know if he might have a weapon. But I think in this type of situation, they're going to assume that both of those individuals inside that vehicle are armed.
Right, and we don't know when this vehicle was stolen either. We don't know if it was something that happened in a confrontation today or, overnight or last week.
Exactly. We know it was picked up, we believe. We know for certain it was a pursuit on the 10 at Atlantic in Monterey Park, that Alhambra, Monterey Park area.
Well, I would say, Scott, that we know he's driving a weapon at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly is. We are westbound on 69th. It's East 69th, so he turned back westbound. So the pattern remains, look at that, though, boy. There's a lot of people outside. And I guess they just don't realize how erratic this guy is. And even the construction workers know it's going on. He makes one of those little turns when you've got 4 or 5 people there taking videos and he loses control of the car. Yeah, well, we're going to get somebody killed with this. Look at that. He loses control again. There might have been a spike strip there. That could have been the same spot. It looks like that may have been the same street that he keeps coming down that they set up the spike strip. I don't know if he hit it that time, or if he just hit the brakes to divert it, or if he just saw the officer there and he hit the brakes to divert coming too close to that patrol car. But if it was a spike strip that he ran over, we'll start to see evidence of that in a moment. Evidence like that, he just can't control the vehicle. There's something going on with that vehicle because he wasn't traveling at such a high rate of speed there. I don't believe that he couldn't have controlled it. Either his driving has gotten worse, or when he hits the brakes are locking up on him. Maybe some sort of damage from the accidents he was involved in. One hitting the center median, and then the other crash running into that poor person getting north on the southbound 110 there at Manchester.
Well, Scott, another element, too, is, as you've mentioned, he's been going in the same area, and police have been able to get in position, so they're in intersections, and he might just be seeing at the last second, I don't want to go that way. There's a police officer there. I'm going to go this way. And so
there's
it
officers
could just
right
be
there.
his
Boy,
efforts.
that's a crazy
Look at this.
Going through a...
Oh, my goodness.
What?
Boy.
Are they armed? I didn't see.
Oh, there's a spike strip. Thank you, Jay.
Oh, wow.
There was a spike strip there.
Yeah,
he
see,
came
that's
down
what he's missed. That's what he's avoiding.
Correct. The one time he hit the brakes, he skidded out, got around it. This time he came right down the same street again and then diverted into that what appeared to be a gas station to get through there right next to officers. And boy, I tell you, those officers are standing there. If it looks like the vehicle's traveling at them, their guns are drawn.
Yeah.
They're going to open fire on these two. That's a possibility. Now, he had the option to get on the 110 northbound, but right now it looks like we're on that surface street that parallels the 110. Open up a little bit right there next to the Harbor Freeway, an area that is east of the Harbor Freeway. And I haven't seen it yet, but I think if he continues on, this will come to a cul-de-sac at one point. We'll have to see where Grand actually ends. It does run quite a ways without it running into any problems. It goes all the way up towards Slauson, I believe, before that happens. So he's got some time. Boy, there he stopped. Not certain exactly why. Sometimes when it stops, we'll see somebody get out, but I don't believe that happened. We still see someone in the passenger seat there.
Scott, if you can take anything from his desperate attempts to avoid spike strips, it does suggest that he's not even thinking about stopping and giving up. I mean, he's doing everything he can to avoid those spike strips every time.
Did he stop under that? There's no on-ramp there either. He must be on Flower if he didn't stop underneath.
Yeah, we didn't see him come out.
Yeah, he got onto Flower. He got onto Flower, 110 southbound.
There he goes.
So, boy, we got a pattern. You see the damage to the back left portion of the vehicle. That's where he spun out trying to get off down by Rosecrans. He's gotten back off of the freeway, though. This may be Manchester that he's coming up on right now. And going around that vehicle, and I don't even believe the patrol cars are right behind him. And that's an interesting scenario when you start to think about it, because even when they go to tracking mode, There is a patrol car there behind him, but even when they did decide to go to surveillance and back off and have no patrol cars next to him, he continued to drive just as erratically as he's driving right now.
Well, my question is, he's staying in the same area. He wants to get away, clearly, but he's in the same area, and he knows the helicopter's overhead, the officers are on the ground. I'm just curious what
you wonder, Giovanna, sometimes when this stays in the same area, if it's somebody who just doesn't want attention. I mean, obviously, if you, well, you know, we're assuming here you're giving any logic whatsoever to the suspect. Yeah. But if your thought process, I'm going to get away, your thought process is I'm going to get away from the police, this certainly isn't the way to do it logically. So you wonder when you watch these things, maybe it's just, look at that, into oncoming traffic on a motorcycle.
Motorcycle.
I mean, you're so vulnerable on a bike. I mean, it just would be an instant death almost if you had a head-on collision. You wonder if it's not attention getting. You know, we've seen that usually. When you look at this, going to be a tough situation here. And when he hits the brakes, the vehicle locks up. I don't know if it's his driving ability or if when he hits the brakes, the vehicle just swerves on him.
Well, it's just no weight in the back, you know. I mean, it's just unstable when you're driving a pickup at that rate of speed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really crazy what we're witnessing here. And what I was saying is, in some cases, the pursuits I've followed in the past, or we've covered, when a person was just doing it to get attention, they were usually driving pretty slow. And it just kept going on and on and on because the police didn't want to stop it. But there was really no danger to the public in most of those. If this guy's doing this just to get attention and not to get away, then, I mean, it really just leads you to another mindset that is just off. Right. You know, well, why would you do that? But, you know, you see that 84 miles an hour on Broadway, headed northbound in South Los Angeles. And if he stays with his same pattern, he's going to make a right turn here pretty soon and go back down towards the Postal Annex, back, we're still east of the 110 freeway, but back towards further south in South LA instead of heading north up towards downtown now.
Well, if you think about it, Scott, I mean, I loved what you said a minute ago, trying to apply logic to somebody who is doing this. But, you know, many cases, you drive where you're familiar. So if he's from this area, he may just continue to think he can find some sort of avenue away from the pressure of the law enforcement. Look at that pedestrian right there who suddenly realized there was a chase right there. But again, another skid out, and this time a left turn.
But is he waiting to maybe, you know, escape into somebody's home? I mean, you have all these questions. Is he on the phone with someone?
Here's a stop. Here's a construction sign. And a tight squeeze. He's going to hit that vehicle to get by. He was able to just drive over the cones there. Let's push in. There's a good shot of our driver, at least one of the best shots we've had of him so far, a real tight shot. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, we just don't know the relationship. It almost looks, I can't quite tell. We don't know the relationship between the driver and the passenger, just that according to the LAPD, they believe it's a man driving and there's a woman in the passenger seat. She could be, you know, held against her own will. It's possible. We don't know that. Or they could be together. They could have stole the vehicle together. It's just so dynamic. There's so many ifs in a situation like this. Makes it really tough for the police. He's a little further north than he was before. We're on Vernon, but he'd been on Vernon before, most of the time east of the 110 freeway. But once again, it started way out in, as far as we know, in Monterey Park. That's where we believe the CHP ran the plate and noticed that it was stolen.
Well, as we now see moving into, as you said, a different area, that means a different set of people now vulnerable because, like you said, Scott, there were so many people coming out. So the neighborhood where he was, at least was somewhat familiar that there was a chase going on. Now you're in an area where this is going to be surprising people when a guy drives up on you at about 50 miles an hour at 11:20 in the morning.
Yep, absolutely. We're in a little different area. We're almost in the Exposition Park area, a little bit west, and where there's some indecision there. Wanting to make a turn and deciding the opposite, you know, you start to wonder if drugs and alcohol could be involved with the driver in a situation like this. But now we're like in Exposition Park, if you will. We're southbound on Normandy, leaving Vernon. Now we're west of the 110, where most of that activity for 20, 30 minutes going around in circles was east of the Harbor Freeway. It could get challenging for us in a few scenarios with traffic going into LAX, and we may have a difficult time with that. Now, the LAPD helicopter won't, for the most part, because he'll be able to stay lower, but we have to have distance from that LAPD helicopter, and then we won't be able to maintain that spacing with the helicopter and then not be too close to the airliners coming into LAX. If he continues south on Normandy, it's just a possibility here we'll have to go around.
Scott, let me interrupt you for a moment. Don't go anywhere. Keep your picture there. We just want to talk to Bruce Thomas, who is a law enforcement expert. He's on the line with us. Bruce, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
What insight can you give us to all this that's happening?
Well, Scott's been reporting this guy is just, we're assuming it's a guy, has just had a total wanton disregard for everyone's safety. Speeds is 70 miles an hour on residential streets, over 100 miles an hour on the freeway. He's forced law enforcement to make some quick decisions, such as backing off, going into a tracking or surveillance mode, just for the general safety of the public that this guy's involving.
Yeah. Well, what's the next tactic on something like this? Clearly this person, you've got this fine line, a person that's putting people at risk, and then authorities don't want to put people at further risk.
Yeah, one of the things in any pursuit, they're constantly evaluating the pursuit. The watch commander, the field supervisor involved in the pursuit, they're weighing the safety against the crime. All you have now basically is a stolen vehicle, which in essence is a misdemeanor crime because you have to permanently deprive the owner of the vehicle in order to get the felony filing on grand theft auto. So you're basically chasing a misdemeanor crime, which is punishable by a year in the county jail and or 6 months or fine. And right now with coronavirus, they're not keeping these people in jail. So the safety becomes the most important part, and you have to, unfortunately, you've got to back off.
Well, but Bruce, don't you have a felony hit and run now? Your first charges, but he ran into somebody head on and left. Wouldn't that be a felony?
Yeah, on the freeway, there was the accident. If there are injuries, and injuries can be very slight, you do have a felony hit and run. Once again, you arrest for that. Whatever gets filed, that's not up to you.
Sure.
But you do want to catch this guy, but ultimately you do have to weigh the safety of the general public and the officers that are chasing him also.
Yeah, but they are clearly staying on him at this point.
Yeah, Giovanna, they're definitely in the area. He seemed to have a pattern of the area he's driving in. There was one point where he drove by a construction area, I think it was on Main, a couple of times, and the construction workers actually threw something at the vehicle. So, and there are people that are hanging out on the street watching. So he's definitely in the area. Whether he knows the area or not, like Scott said, I don't know, but it seems that he does have some sort of purpose in this area.
How does it factor in even when they went to surveillance mode, and Scott pointed this out as well, even when authorities went to surveillance mode, it's not like this person driving suddenly started following the rules of the road. That person continued to drive recklessly. So does that factor in?
You hope that when you go to a surveillance or tracking mode that it de-escalates the situation, meaning the people that are being chased kind of like, oh, okay, they're not following us anymore, we can slow down. But in this case, that tactic has not worked at all.
You talked about the theft of the vehicle being a misdemeanor, but at this point, he's racked up a lot of charges.
Yeah, you have felony vandalism when he hit the freeway sign and knocked it into the road. You have, like Philip said, you have the felony hit and run on the freeway. You have numerous traffic violations. You definitely have reckless driving because of the traffic violations that he's done, the speed laws he's broken, and also, then you have the main charge of taking the vehicle.
Right. So would this be qualified as more than just a misdemeanor then?
Well, like Philip said, you do have the felony hit and run.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your primary, your secondary charge.
Right.
Your primary charge is going to be the taking the vehicle or the stolen vehicle. But in this case, this is someone that really wants to get away. And as Scott said, there's something underlying here, whether he's a three strike felon or there's a kidnapping involved. it's unknown, but there's definitely more than I'm just got a stolen vehicle.
I would agree, Bruce, because, I mean, if you're just doing this for attention, I agree with Scott. You drive much more slowly because he's putting his, or she, whoever's driving, is putting their own life at risk, not just others.
Yeah, this is one of the more dangerous pursuits we've seen. There have been, hundreds of pursuits, but this is somebody that really wants to get away for whatever reason. And I believe it's just more than a stolen vehicle.
And so what would the strategy be for officers at this point?
That is a great question because you have a watch commander at the station, you have a field supervisor. They're trying to make decisions on the fly here. You flood the area with police cars, with units, so when they do a foot bail, you're going to catch them. But ultimately, you can try to maybe box him in, keep him in a more general geographic area. They've already tried the spike strips. They've deployed twice, and he, has seen them and avoided them. So in this case, they maybe, just stay in radio communication. You can never outrun a helicopter and a radio.
That is the truth. Let's go to Scott Reif. He's in Air 7. Bruce, thanks for that, and hopefully you can stick with us for a moment. Scott, what are we seeing now?
Well, we're in an industrial area on 61st, back close to the same area as that before, and there's going to be a tight squeeze through here. There's a semi right in front of them you're going to see here in a moment. And if LAPD can get a unit down at the end of the street, they can actually block them off. I don't know if they're going to have time, but the helicopter could be able to radio that ahead. If we open up a little bit, you'll see what's in store here. It's a street through an industrial area, and it comes out just north of the Postal Annex in South Los Angeles. But it doesn't look like they were able to get a unit there in time. They could have maybe possibly shut that down. There was no real routes off of that street, off the 61st Street. But we're now turning southbound. Looks like this is probably going to be back onto Central. And we're back in the same area. But I tell you, we listened to the speaker he just had. I didn't catch his name. But it's got to be really tough for the police. Bruce, thank you so much for that. Because you don't want to just let a guy like this get away as well. I mean, you don't want to set a standard, whereas you drive crazy through the city, we're just going to let you go. Because then you may be encouraging individuals to do that any time that they get pulled over or get lit up by the police. They'll just run, and they'll know that the police aren't going to follow. So it's really a catch-22. It's a tough situation to be in. The patrol cars are a long ways back right now because you're traveling at such a high rate of speed on Central, but certainly, the area, the slowing there for a moment.
One got out.
Oh.
Did someone get out?
I may be wrong. I don't know that.
I did see someone running.
A person might have been. Maybe we'll get that on videotape and roll it back.
That didn't look like a man, but maybe. I couldn't tell. But it looks to me like there's still a passenger
person in there. Yeah.
I think they gave them something, and you know what that looks like? A bottle of alcohol. I'm not certain what it would be, but it appeared that individual, that passenger right there, opened up a bottle of something and took a drink.
Wow.
Oh, boy, they're sliding out once again. Open up for me a little bit, Tad, so I can see the oncoming.
We're just being told by the producer that it might have been the other way around.
Look to me what happened at that intersection. You guys can run it back and see that. I won't be able to see it, that he stopped in the intersection. A man ran up, gave them a bottle of alcohol. I'm just assuming it's alcohol, bottle of something. And immediately the passenger, as they drove down the street, opened up that bottle and took a big chug.
Man. It was such a quick exchange there. It almost looked like the guy got out. But yeah, you're right. It was a person on the street, and there was an exchange of substance.
Something.
We'll put it that way.
Something. But if they received some alcohol, that doesn't bode well for this.
It doesn't. It doesn't bode well for the mentality on board that vehicle.
It's also not likely going to bode well for the person who gave it to them, because if there are that many now you're almost
could have got out.
Oh,
now he's stuck. We'll see. Open up a little bit. Are there units behind him?
We see.
Are there units behind him? That vehicle is actually stopping him. He could have got out of the way.
I see the passenger.
Get a little bit if you could, so we can see.
He's
hitting It looks like he's trying to push him out of the way, but it's not working. He's wedged.
Smoking tires or shots,
he needs to
Scott?
Stay in there.
Yeah, I think he's trying to push him possibly, and those are the tires smoking. Open up a little bit for me and be very careful here with this shot, Tad. We do not want to show somebody getting hurt or killed, even those suspects. And if that driver puts that in reverse and goes towards the officers, they are more than likely going to open fire. It looks like right now he's just gunning it and trying to push that pickup truck out of the way. Push in quickly, and
wow.
it may work. He's slowly pushing. Is there anybody in the pickup truck, or do they have enough sense to get out?
No, they tried to open the door, Scott. The driver opened the door on that pickup.
Yeah.
Now
oh, boy, look at this.
They're still
look
trying
at
to get
this.
away.
Yeah, but that pickup truck could get away if he wanted to, right? He's actually trying to stop the guy.
He just backed up into him.
So that's a big mistake. The police don't want you to do that if you just saw that. But it looks like there may be damage to the vehicle. It can't travel that fast.
Yeah, the back rear wheels are totally damaged.
And you can almost see the panic on the passenger's face there.
It looks like a. It looks like a male. Maybe not.
Didn't look like panic there.
No.
I thought it was going to be, but there's got to be a lot of panic knowing now that this is going to end soon. Could you open up a little bit for me so I can get an idea what the patrol cars are doing behind them? But
it will end soon now. That was as effective as a spike strip.
Wow.
Correct. And, in this case, it looked like that was effective, what that individual did, that citizen, that civilian in the vehicle. But they certainly don't want you to do that because you're putting yourself in harm's way. This vehicle is going to get uncontrollable here in a minute.
Yeah.
What's dicey now is how this ends. And if it ends in gunfire, we're around homes. I mean, if they get out and they threaten the police, or if they're armed and it ends up in a shooting, you just hate to see an innocent person hurt or killed. And the vehicle is certainly slowed. There's difficulty. The tire just came off. So it's on the rim on that left side. This should be over in a moment. We hope no one gets hurt. And, of course, people outside trying to film it.
See, I don't see panic. I see belligerence on the passenger.
Exactly.
Yep.
I didn't see panic.
I thought I saw it, and then I noticed it was the opposite.
No.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, Scott,
those
on a rim like that, that's going to get so hot, you'll absolutely have no control on the back end. They might not even need to try a pit maneuver in this circumstance. They may just be able to let them pit themselves.
I think it'll be depending on how fast that individual can get this vehicle going. But I've actually seen this before. Once it's on the rim, there'll be enough heat. It'll catch on fire, and then what'll happen is the rim will disintegrate. It'll go right down to the axle, and then the vehicle can't move. So they're going to be content more than likely to just back off as far as the vehicles are concerned and wait till this vehicle can no longer move, because that time is coming.
Well, as we think back to the pickup that stopped them, I don't want to put too much on that person. I mean, that person might just have been angry that somebody was trying to bump them, and because at first they were trying to get out of the vehicle, then was smart enough to stay in the vehicle. But that is what put us in this place, was that person refusing to get out of the way.
Right.
And this person's still driving high rate of speed with no tire, Scott.
With no tire on the rim. I can't see that this can continue that much longer. There was a pursuit I covered one time with a Range Rover that was on 4 rims, and it went on forever, it seemed like, up on the 101 up towards Santa Barbara. But in this case, I just don't think that this vehicle is going to be able to travel for long on that one rim without it just collapsing onto the axle. And when that happens, it won't be able to move, and at least we're seeing speeds now that aren't that dangerous to the public.
Yeah, but you just have to wonder what they are thinking and what their goal and their plan is. How long do they plan to stay in this vehicle? They know they're going to be caught.
They
have to know that.
We've been down this road before here, correct, Scott?
You were blocked there. Could you say again, Philip?
I think they've been on this road before.
Yeah, several times. This is Grand. It parallels the 110 freeway just to the east side. And it looks like we've got some information that they will try and do the pit maneuver if they feel that it's safe. You can tell, it's belligerence. You're absolutely right. It's almost as they're celebrating.
She just opened the door.
Yeah.
She's trying to get out.
Maybe she wants to get out. At this point, I would think panic is setting in, right?
It's her phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to think it's close to panic, that they know that they're going to be in handcuffs here pretty soon. And there are felony charges on this. I mean, there's so many charges. I think it just keeps going and going and going. From a stolen vehicle to evading to reckless driving to felony hit and run. The driver for certain is going to be in a whole lot of trouble.
Well, and this is how dangerous is this? You're going down oncoming traffic again.
Yeah. Ooh, did they just throw something out? they just threw something out or something
I
fell
didn't
from
see
the car.
that. Yeah, I'm not certain if something was thrown out there or not. It was kind of hard to see.
I think it was something that crossed in front of the lens.
Yeah, something might have fallen off. I mean, if we get to the other side, I think we're going to see that rim at some point just collapse. Oh boy, and you can't control the vehicle. We're on Main Street at Gage in South Los Angeles, and once it does stop, you can see how hard it is to get going again. So it wouldn't surprise me that any moment now, if it's clear in front of the vehicle, they'll try and do the pit maneuver because the speed is such that if they do hit it from behind, it'll just spin out. And boy, that's a dangerous situation for the officers, though. That vehicle spins around, and you're doing the pit maneuver, and you don't know if the suspect's armed or not. You got to figure the adrenaline's going to be high on that one.
Well, and you can also see the damage being done to the surface of the road because of that the rim. It is just cutting right into the surface of the road, and I just can't believe. To be honest with you, Scott, I can't believe he's made it this far after losing that tire.
Yeah, good old General Motors ingenuity there, right? The rear rim is working pretty good. I think that's a Chevy, if I'm not mistaken. But you can see how long it takes him for getting up to speed. But you know, you start seeing 40, 50 miles an hour with the rim like that. If he tries to make a turn, he will not be able to control the vehicle. And we may see this here. But that rim is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Sure
you
is.
see that?
Sure is,
And when it drops off completely onto the axle, then I think the vehicle won't be controllable. Once it does slow, it's really hard to get going once again. And it is quite amazing that it's continued on this long since the flat occurred. But you know, it's the last few precious moments for these two. They're either going to end up in jail or something worse, and you see a lot of people still out on the streets there.
But it's not slowing them down. Look, they're going almost 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, I guess they can get it to that speed, right? Once it stops, it's really hard to get it accelerating to that speed, but it's also going to be nearly uncontrollable if you try and make a turn now. And I believe that police will move in as soon as they have the chance, do the pit maneuver, and end this. We hope that person that was hit on that head-on collision, we're at Avalon and Florence here, you can tell how slow it moves once it's stopped. It just can't get any momentum. Look at the sparks flying out from that rim. We could see it catch on fire. We've seen that happen before. The rubber there will start to catch on fire and then it'll spread to the vehicle. 15 miles an hour, it takes a while to get going. And we believe that the police will probably move in and stop this when they can. But at least at this point, we're not seeing this being a huge threat to the public because we're not seeing those 80-mile-an-hour speeds like we saw before. This will be over soon, and like I mentioned, we hope this just ends peacefully, that they just did this for attention, and when they are told to get out of the vehicle, they put their hands up, they turn around, and they do it by the book because you know the officers are pretty hyped up on this. It's been going on for a while. And you know that they don't know if these suspects could be armed, and if they don't obey the orders that they're given by the officers and they make any quick movements, they do what looks like might be reaching for a weapon, they're going to open fire.
Well, clearly they are erratic and desperate. So I would assume officers are going to operate from the assumption that they are armed, just from the sense of how they've reacted so far.
Their
so
behavior.
I mean, this is, even though we know the chase part will end soon because of the condition of the vehicle, we don't know how this is going to end and we hope, like you said, that it will end safely for all those concerned. But given the attitude and demeanor of these two people, it's impossible to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Who thought we were going to see this today, huh? We got this gold Chevy driving down Avalon, and that push into the rim, it's almost gone. You remember what that rim, oh, there it goes. I think it's going to collapse in a moment. And when it does, remember how big it was when we first saw that? It was just a few moments ago. And it's just disintegrating. And I think any moment now it's just going to collapse. And when that happens, I think that this will end right after that.
Right.
Well, and if it was on the front, if he'd lost one of those front tires, there's no way you can steer. So at least, you know, I guess to a degree for him, he can control the vehicle in some measure because he has the front wheel.
Jay, if you could.
But once he can't, once he has no forward
I was trying to get a
momentum,
message to Jay just for a moment there. If you can have him stay off the frequency, that'd be great. Yeah, absolutely. We are on Avalon southbound, Philip. Open up a little bit for me, Chad. I just want to get an idea exactly what the police are doing here. And you see the patrol cars right behind them. The helicopter is still overhead. At least, and boy, a little acceleration there. You got to think the suspect at this point has the gas pedal all the way to the floor, right? Because it's the only way you can get it up to this type of speed. We're hoping when this stops, they do the pit. It's all over. We're also just, if you live in this area, it's really the area that it's been most of the time in South LA. Just stay inside. This could end in a shootout.
Yeah, you never know.
That's possible.
That is a good message, Scott, for the folks watching. Do not go outside. Do not anticipate that this will end peacefully, because you just do not know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you covered these things. You do this for long enough. You know how dynamic it is. You just never know what's going to happen. But you also have seen so many innocent people be hurt. Now, I hit the brakes there. You saw that rim lock up for a moment. And now it'll take a while before the vehicle can get back up to speed. And if the officer sees the opportunity, usually it's below 35 or 40 miles an hour. Anything above that, they don't like to do the pit. He'll do the pit maneuver. But also he has to make sure there's nobody around.
Yeah.
The officer doesn't want to be involved in an action right now, or an activity when this is probably going to come to a stop on its own, where his action causes the harm of someone else. They really don't. I mean, you watch this and just know that there's a supervisor and a watch commander, and they're all over this, and they're trying to figure out the best way for this to end without incident.
Well, and they know more than we know, and they know that they can sit back and wait for this person to eventually have the vehicle completely disabled. So there's no, when he had an opportunity to pit in that intersection, there were a lot of cars, a lot of people right there. So yeah, 100%, Scott.
Here's a turn.
They can just sit back and wait.
Yeah, it almost looks like we've been by that Arco a few times right there. That might have been where they put the spike strip out earlier. Another spike strip might be a good idea, because if they could get some of the other tires flat, then this would really just, end at a snail's pace.
Right.
But incredibly, this individual is able to keep going. We did get a report just moments ago. Jay passed that on to me, that according to the police, that the passenger is trying to egg on the crowds. They're trying to get people going. They're trying to actually, get some enthusiasm out of them. So this whole dangerous thing may have just been a ploy here in South LA for people to get attention. And if that is the case, then you start to think about, mental health, drugs, and alcohol, because you really can't explain it any other way. And then it was incredible when the vehicle went around that corner, and it appeared to be a man who ran up and gave them a bottle of, champagne. It looked like a big bottle of something of who knows. And what was really incredible is how quickly she opened it up and started drinking it. It was like she couldn't do it any faster. She wanted that immediately.
Yeah, it speaks to their mindset. But also, Scott, I wonder, LAPD, they know, they're watching him clearly. Would they not at this point set up some sort of blockade at some point? You mentioned a semi being used at one point in a previous pursuit. Because he's in the same area.
Look at this. Now, they had a spike strip set up at Main, up ahead, and he made a turn.
Yeah.
They don't like to do barricades per se, and they don't like to really put their cars in front of that and stop the pursuit that way unless they absolutely have to. It was just a pursuit that was uncommon that I covered up in the North Hollywood area one time, where they did actually commandeer a semi and they moved it forward a little bit, and then they just got away from it.
Yeah.
But you don't really see them put their patrol cars in one spot, and because they don't know where he's heading, and just get out of their vehicle and leave him in the intersection. I assume it's a possibility, but at this point, I don't think they would consider that, because they're going to spike him again for sure. What is that? Did someone throw something on the windshield of the vehicle?
Remember the construction people were said to have thrown something. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, that was a while ago. I just noticed that.
But it looks like
here we go. We're going to get a
fire.
fire in the back of this vehicle.
Well, Scott, I noticed you can't see it a lot of times because of the small monitor you have, but I noticed the right rear wheel was also now at a different angle. So clearly, I think the axle might have broken at some level.
Also, the passenger side door is open. She is holding it close, but it is open. I think they're getting ready to just, make a run for it.
I think right now LAPD is probably looking at this and saying, something, just hang on back. It's going to end eventually. The vehicle is going to completely break down, and then we're going to take these guys into custody. They may do a spike strip, but I doubt they would see them put their patrol cars in front of the truck. And they may do a pit maneuver, but there's not too many places around here where you can do it without possibly endangering somebody on the sidewalk.
I'm just shocked as I see that axle that it hasn't gone ahead and completely caught on fire. I would say this, Scott, when the vehicle does stop, that back end is going to catch on fire, because that's going to, the wind will not be doing anything to keep the flames down. And as soon as they stop, my guess is they're better. I hope there's fire officials nearby, because that is going to be so hot that it could likely catch that vehicle on fire.
Passenger door open again.
Yep, I don't know if she's trying to get out, Giovanna.
She keeps opening it.
Yeah, she's going to, we'll try and get around that side because we see she's doing something. We did have information she was trying to get the crowd going. I think it's going to stop here in this alleyway. Turn into an alleyway. Can you open up a little bit so I can see what's ahead? And we want to get a little bit further south so we can see down the alley. Officers may be able to get to the other side and stop it at that intersection before it gets to probably what's going to be 77th Street. There's an officer to the right. If he turns right, there'd be an officer down there. There's a lot of patrol cars in these intersections. The vehicle is barely moving. I think at this point they're just going to wait and watch this thing stop and then hopefully take the suspects into custody without incident. But you can tell, push in there. Did it catch on fire? It's close, and it's going to be right down to the axle.
Yeah.
It is on the gas tank side.
And going to get worse as soon as he stops.
Yeah, very, very interesting. It looks like he's having a difficult time now controlling the vehicle, and it's having to turn the wheel quite a bit to continue to go straight. And I think there's a spike strip up ahead at Main Street, at 78th and Main possibly. When the vehicle's traveling this slow, it gives officers a lot of time to set something up. And, you know, traveling at 80 miles an hour is nearly impossible. But in a situation like this, can you open up? Oh, did it stop there? No. I saw that other vehicle. We believe at this intersection coming up, there may be another spike strip. You see the patrol car there at Main Street. So there's a spike strip there. Now the vehicle stopped, and this is where it gets dicey, folks. There's a fire in the back. You can see a little flame coming out there. The door is open. Open up a little bit and be careful here, Tad, if this turns into a gun battle. People, oh boy, they made a run for it. They get out of the vehicle and they ran. They will be in custody here in just a moment. That is for certain. There's an officer down the street. We'll try and keep them in the screen, but they're going to have them in custody in a moment.
They just got the woman.
One is down, two are down. They have both in custody. Yeah. And you can push in now, Tad, all the way in. I believe, is that just one or is that both?
That's one. On the other side of the street is the other.
Okay, open up. They're still chasing the other one?
There were just two. They found
Oh, the dog's going to help? Yeah. Okay, boy, both are in custody in what was a wild pursuit, extremely high rates of speed. We did see, unfortunately, that one person that was probably injured when the vehicle turned around. And they are having a tough time subduing this individual. He does not want to give himself up. He is resisting officers. That's the driver. He had the hat on. That's the male. The other side of the street is the female. Go ahead, Philip.
Can you see the vehicle without taking the camera off of here? Can you see the vehicle and see if it's on fire at this point? I don't want to take away from the suspects, but
the vehicle's there. It is. It's fine.
Okay.
It seemed to cool off once they slowed down. But, you know, watching something like this, there were so many instances when somebody could have been hurt or killed that this followed a pattern in which this is probably one of the best outcomes. Now, unfortunately, that one person was probably injured. I don't know if we have that tape. It was just crazy. The vehicle spun out, then got onto the northbound 110, or heading northbound onto the southbound 110 into oncoming traffic. That person in that vehicle is more than likely injured, hopefully just minor. We did see the airbag open up. But with all the possible outcomes we could have had today, with this pursuit that's gone on, I don't know, an hour and a half or so, and how dangerous it was, this is at least an outcome where no one, we believe, was seriously hurt. And in a situation like that, that's incredible.
We do have one officer that it keeps shaking his hand, so he either was injured, hurt when he was trying to cuff the person, or maybe he was bitten. We're not quite sure, but you can see he's the one that continues to shake his hand as if something happened during the arrest there. So there's another charge on top of that.
Yeah. Can we look
I
to the right
just want to see the female.
Yeah.
She's being taken into custody. She obviously did not resist like the male did. We understand the fire department is on their way. The fire department will definitely give aid to these two suspects. They'll just take their condition and make sure they're okay before the LAPD takes them. They may have to take them to the hospital if they were hurt. It's hard to say. But certainly, this is a situation that could have ended so badly. It ended here with the two suspects in custody. And as far as that one injury, we don't think anyone else seriously hurt. And, that's what we were hoping for right from the beginning when we started following this vehicle doing 80 through residential areas here in South Los Angeles.
Yeah, and 100 miles on the freeway, and we saw this driver, his behavior was so erratic and, again, complete disregard for the safety of the people on the roads. We saw him drive against traffic on the freeways. That's when that accident happened that you mentioned on the 110. This has been, a very dangerous pursuit. Very dangerous pursuit. It's good that they are now apprehended and that no one was hurt in that process.
Yeah, and interesting because, if you haven't been with us during the entire pursuit, the LAPD tried to do their best to just back off, and they were hoping that the suspect would just drive calmly and, just go about his own business and maybe try and get on his feet and run and get out of the vehicle. But the suspect wouldn't do that, even with the LAPD backing off, going into surveillance mode. The suspect continued to drive erratically at high rates of speed and endanger the public, and that's when they re-engaged. And it ended here. You guys probably have some footage to run back, but that was pretty sensational. That vehicle could continue going for so long on that rim.
Yeah, we were showing the one where he went. This is the video right now where he went into oncoming traffic.
Oh, boy.
After trying to get off of the freeway indecisively. The high rate of speed caused him to spin out, and then the insanity of driving the wrong way and then into the vehicle there.
Yeah.
Thankfully, both of them appear to have put on their brakes, so it wasn't a high-speed collision, but it certainly was high enough that, as Scott has mentioned on a couple of occasions, the person in that other vehicle might have been hurt. And this is when the vehicle was disabled because the pickup in front decided you're not going, whether that was intentional trying to stop the chase or whether it was a person who was just going, you hit my vehicle and we're going to stop and talk. We don't know about that, but that's when he ended up losing that back tire.
Yeah, they wouldn't recommend that somebody do that, but in this case, it worked out okay. I mean, the suspect could have been armed and shot that individual for stopping the vehicle there. You just never know, so I don't think that's a risk you want to take as a civilian, but in this case, it did turn out that act was one of the reasons this ended when it did and how it did, and so it worked out. The suspects both in custody, and come open up and just look at the crowd down at the bottom of your screen, 78th and Main in South LA. And, word got out, I don't know if this is an area where the suspect and the passenger may have lived, but a lot of people were hearing that the pursuit was ongoing. They would have heard the